After the release of Tomb Raider on PC and PlayStation, there were many rumours which sprang up almost on a monthly basis that the N64 would be seeing Lara Croft in all her glory hitting the console. Sadly for many, she never did find her way onto the system, and there were many people within the industry that said that the console just couldn't handle the huge environments needed to live up to the game's epic scope and scale. If there was one studio you believe could do the job, it was LucasArts. And so when the news broke that they were developing the first 3D Indiana Jones game, many of us hoped that with the exclusive deal Nintendo had signed with LucasArts at the start of the console's life, we would eventually see that game. Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine landed on PC in late 1999 to generally positive reviews. The main criticisms of the game were that the controls on PC were a little too fiddly, and it was as close to Tomb Raider clone as one could have asked for. So with the N64 version's development well underway, the question then changed from if the game would be any good, to if it would come out in time to make any impact, as the console was losing its gamer base by the expected December 2000 release date. Arriving just 2 weeks before Christmas in North America, it was a game that wasn't available in traditional store shelves. This game was only available through Blockbuster stores as a rental title, or if you wanted to buy your own copy, you had to order it directly from LucasArts' online store. The PAL release of the game was due to be handled by Electronic Arts, however this changed to THQ, who were due to release it in March of 2001. The release date slipped month after month, and in September of 2001 the game was officially cancelled for its European release, and so it remains as much of a holy grail as the relics Dr. Jones is known for hunting. Very recently though, the PAL ROM file was dumped online, and so it just shows how close this game was to hitting store shelves here in Europe. It's fully playable, and from a complete playthrough of the game I couldn't find any problems that were not already present in the North American release. The game itself takes place in 1947, and we find Dr. Jones up to his old tricks by returning to the dig sites at the end of the war. After a solid introductory level, where you learn the basics of the gameplay, you are met by Sophia Hapgood, who has been recruited to join the CIA. The game's project leader, Hal Barwood, who had previously worked on the timeless classic Indiana Jones point-and-click games, decided that by this time Nazis had been overused in games, and so instead decided to make the game's main villains the Cold War Soviets. Funnily enough though, the original plot for the game involved the subject of UFOs. However, this idea was not allowed to progress any further, as George Lucas himself vetoed this, as he was still tossing this idea around for the then unannounced fourth Indiana Jones movie. Having to change the game's plot, Hal Barwood then decided to look at ancient technology, such as the Antikythera mechanism, and decided to use this as the MacGuffin and set this in the biblical Tower of Babel. After Sophia Hapgood hires you to investigate what ancient technology the Russians are searching for, you begin your quest, which takes you across the world to exotic locations where each of the game's 17 huge levels take place. You find out that Dr. Volodnikov, a Soviet physicist who has an unusual interest in alternative dimensions, and their objective is to find a weapon more powerful than the atom bomb which they will use to settle the Cold War. That weapon is a Babylonian god called Marduk, who lives in an alternative plane of reality. The god Marduk had inspired the ancient king Nebuchadnezzar II to build a great engine, but the Babylonians, who were scared of its power, tore down the tower which housed this infernal machine, hence the game's title. 4 of God's disciples took parts of the Infernal Machine and scattered them across the world, and so your quest in the game is to beat the Russians to this ancient artifacts and to stop them being able to bring this demonic presence back to Earth. This fascinating and interesting story is totally gripping, and as you progress through the game's levels you'll be greeted with cutscenes which do help to drive the story along and give you context as to why you are in some bizarre locations. If you've played any game of this genre, then when playing this game you will feel instantly at home, and yes, that does include the Tomb Raider games. It's hard to get away from the fact that these games are closely linked, but perhaps for many gamers the appeal of cracking Indy's whip is far more appealing than shooting T-Rexes with Lara's pistols. Perhaps where Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine really shines though, is in its perfect blend of platforming and puzzle solving. Many games of this genre have tried and failed to find the perfect balance of this, but when a game like this does it so right, it creates an experience that's as compelling and memorable as anything else you may have played before. Whilst your objective each level is to solve the puzzles, kill the bad guys and reach the end still alive, Indiana Jones rewards games that like to take things a little more slowly, and in a true adventurer style, spend some time exploring the world itself. The game's levels are some of the biggest ever seen on the Nintendo 64, and it's not uncommon for some levels to take you hours to complete the first time you play through them, as you figure out exactly what you need to do. It's not a game which holds your hand the whole time, and there will be moments in which you'll be stuck on wondering how to progress. And scattered across the levels are a number of treasures and smaller artifacts for you to collect. When you collect these, your IQ is increased, and the higher you get this, the more secrets you will unlock. I always try to avoid spoilers where possible, and so I will say this is not just filler, and for those of you who explore enough, you will be rewarded accordingly. What I also loved about the experience of playing this game was the sheer variety it contains. Sure, we all know Indy from his huge set pieces, and this game doesn't disappoint. In addition to traversing on foot, you'll also be plunged into oceans and rivers for you to explore underwater. If that's not enough excitement for you, then you'll also have whitewater rapids to deal with in your dinghy, which at certain points in the game offers one of the most challenging sections which will test even the most dedicated gamer. Some levels are that huge that you'll also get to drive a jeep across them. This is not just to save time, but it also offers some awesome set pieces where you'll have broken bridges to jump and enemies to ram over cliff edges. My personal favourite though was the minecart. In a later level in the game, in the movie's true spirit, you will be riding a minecart through the pits. But rather than being a quick minigame of sorts, it forms a cleverly designed level where your ride becomes part of the overall level's puzzle. It's moments like this that you would appreciate just how well designed the levels are. Sure, there are some which are not as exciting or important as others, but the majority of the game seems like a masterclass in level design. Reviewers of the time such as IGN, Eurogamer and Computer and Video Games even went as far as to say that the design had some of the most brilliant layouts ever seen in a game of this type. The game's controls though are another story. When the PC version was released, it was perhaps the biggest criticism the game received. Many players found the control system to be too fiddly and not as intuitive as a game of this type needs. Most notably though, due to the large number of platforming sections that at times does require pinpoint precision. Taking the controls back to the drawing board, Factor 5 wanted to completely redo this to work on the console and with the N64 controller. To do this, they took inspiration from the Ocarina of Time, with its targeting system which they implemented into the game, and it works wonders when doing battle with the Soviets or the many other beasts that you'll encounter. With all of the controls at your fingertips, Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine just seems to be at home when played with the N64 controller. It feels more natural and a little more responsive than the PC counterpart. And with Zelda's same C button mapping for quick item use, it means that you'll spend far more time looking at the screen than which key to press. You'll never have the same fluidity as games like Uncharted, but for the time, we're almost used to the often stiff and wooden character models. If you haven't played a 3D adventure game from this era for some time, it will take you a little bit of time to get used to all over again, but I feel it's a training that will reward you with such a solid game experience. Speaking of the game being a little stiff, the animation and character models are overshadowed by what is perhaps the best looking game on the console. Like many of their previous PC to N64 ports, the N64 version improves upon the visual aesthetics. Sure, it may not be anywhere near as powerful as PCs of the time, but the extra development time allowed LucasArts and Factor 5 to add some nice touches. Firstly, the lighting has been vastly improved, and the real-time lighting now makes the world feel more alive like never before. The particle system too, which was not present in the PC version, adds minor details such as falling rocks when Indy climbs, which make you feel a greater sense of realism and risk-taking. The overall textures are beautiful, and with the expansion pack the game runs in a gorgeous high resolution mode. Aside from Rogue Squadron, I can't think of any other game which has such stark contrast between the graphics with or without the expansion pack in use. As the vast majority of the game takes place without enemies on the screen, the frame rate is rock solid. In the infrequent occasions where there are multiple enemies on screen, the frame rate can suffer slightly, and the fact that the frame rate is so smooth the rest of the time makes this a little more noticeable than it would have been otherwise. The sound too is also another area which was improved upon over the PC version. Again, reviewers of the time said this sounded much better than the PC version, and as we know this is largely down to the use of Factor 5's music's compression. I personally loved the huge amount of voice acted dialogue in the game. Some of it does come off a little corny and cheesy, but heck, this is an Indiana Jones game, and there's got to be some comedic one-liners to make you really feel that you are playing as Indy himself. The PC version of the game had a pre-recorded soundtrack, whereas the N64 version has a sequenced one, and this version also contains music not found in the PC release. Over 130 pieces of original music are crammed into the game, and composer Clint Barjakian did a great job to really make the game sound like the movies. The personal highlight for me though were the game's sound effects. As you know, I love a game with a powerful sounding weapons and deep rumbling bass heavy sound effects system, and Indiana Jones doesn't disappoint. As you open secret chambers or crack your whip, everything sounds right on the money. My only gripe though is that at times you can notice a heavy compression and it leaves a slightly echoey tone in places. The multiplayer mode originally announced alongside the game was eventually canned during production, but as a single player game, Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine was perhaps the last great console game to be released on the N64. My biggest disappointment is that it remained a mystery to many gamers due to the unusual release model, and when the N64 was nearly coming to an end, it really meant that not many people did get to pick this up. And so it's also perhaps a strength of the game. As it remained elusive to many collectors, there are still many gamers who have not experienced this fantastic title. It's not cheap to pick up, but for the price tag it goes for what I think is definitely justified. While it is more linear than games like Zelda and Shadow Man, Indiana Jones is an adventure game that crafts in so much of the original Indiana Jones universe that even if you're only slightly a fan of the movies, then playing this game will keep you entertained from the opening level to the final secret mission, where you will return to the Peruvian jungle to retrieve a golden idol in a flashback straight out of the opening of Raiders of the Lost Ark. And so for today's topic of conversation, I want to know if you were one of the few who picked this up back in the day. With ordering a game directly from the publisher's website being a highly unusual method of buying a game for its time, how did you experience this? Or perhaps you rented this from Blockbuster, and due to the size of the game you had to keep extending your period so that you could finally finish the game. Whatever your thoughts, memories or experiences with the game, let me know in the comment section down below, and until next time.
That boulder, still blocking the exit. I'm lucky I got out alive.